All right, I think we're live now. GM, everyone. Lovely full house here. Really excited to get into this today. So you signed up for the Dynamic Art Engine webinar. This is our first larger overview and walkthrough of the Dynamic Art Engine. And so, first things first, we're going to start off with an introduction of myself and Ben here, and then we're going to jump into what Dot Fun is, what the Dynamic Art Engine is. It's going to be a bit of a tour at first. We're just going to kind of, Ben's going to show us around. And in the meantime, as we're walking you through things, if you have questions, please feel free to use the chat to comment. I'll do my best to answer everyone in a timely manner. And then towards the end, we might do like a more open Q&A where we can bring people on stage and continue answering questions. So yeah, really excited to have you all here. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to do this. And some of you, I think, have created dynamic art before, others haven't. What we've built will allow you to create dynamic and interactive art with ease. And I think Ben here is having a bit of a cold. So please excuse the sniffles or anything like that. But yeah, my name is Daniel Volkov. I run artist relations and marketing here at Transient Labs. Ben here is a co-founder of Transient Labs and one of the gigabrains behind the Dynamic Art Engine. How's it going, Ben?
Good, man. Thanks for setting this up. Yeah, and sorry if I'm out of breath and hopped up on cold medicine or whatever. But I'll try to keep all that stuff to a minimum. Never strikes at a good time. I'm excited to dive into dynamic art, what it is, why we've been doing it forever, and this like new tool that we're building that we feel like internally, especially like Marco and I just feel like this is one of the coolest products we've ever built. Its potential is huge. We like to kind of think of it as almost like a Photoshop for digital, like a next level of the workflow for digital art. So dynamic art is a creation process. Basically taking artwork and making it living in some way or another, responsive to its environment or to its users or viewers and collectors. And so this is like a Photoshop that we're building to enable you to turn any of your artwork into that kind of a new genre of digital art.
Right. And we've had a few great examples already come out of the Dynamic Art Engine from different creators, which we actually posted a thread earlier today, if you guys want to check that out on our X account. All sorts of different creators using the DAE in different ways, whether it's a photographer using it for generative outputs, or another photographer using it for lightscaping. For Red Rum, who may or may not be here, used it to create a piece that changes 17 times in a day. So most of the time when you look at it, it'll be different in a different state, which is really unique. And so yeah, Ben, I'd love for maybe us to start with just kind of an overview of what is dynamic art, and then maybe we can just jump into Transient Dot Fun.
Yeah. So dynamic art it's kind of a big can of worms, but there's a lot of different ways to do dynamic art. But essentially, and I wrote an article about dynamic art that I need to publish, that I keep getting sidetracked and stuff. It's like 90% done. But really, it's artwork. It can be contract based. It can be HTML based, which is what Dynamic Art Engine is built for. It's artwork that is aware in some way or another, is aware of its surroundings. It's aware of its environment, and that can mean like external data. It can mean something as simple as like what time of day it is. It can also mean like who's interacting with it. So it's aware of how it's being interacted with. It's responsive, it's reactive. So that's like what dynamic art is. And a lot of generative art is dynamic art just by its nature. If you've explored art blocks projects, there's a lot of interactive pieces that you can rotate and pieces that respond with time or some kind of, on-chain Oracle data endpoint or something. So, and then it can also just be artwork that you apply your own existing artwork to. So photography, illustrations, video types. You could make image types dynamic. You can mix and match medias. So maybe it's an image that comes to life at night and animates into an MP4. So yeah, it's kind of part of the workflow. You do your normal workflow to create the artwork that you create. And then dynamic art is like the next step. Now, do you want to make this piece dynamic, increase like the experience that collectors can have with this piece? So it's just a really cool unlock. And it's kind of a new genre of digital art, I would say. So
It's also the origin kind of Transient Labs, right?
yeah, it's definitely the origin. It's where we started. Yeah, it can change based on anything. We've talked about, Caroline asked if it's can change based on moods, and you could tap into what is that? Aura rings. Aura rings could detect like your stress levels, and you could make an artwork theoretically that uses their API to pull data from your Aura ring and change based on your mood, which is a really cool use case I've brought up multiple times. If you have artwork in your house that's responding to your moods to counterbalance, if you're feeling stressed, maybe your artwork chills a bit, enters a lot of blue and green tonality. And if you're feeling sleepy, maybe it starts to get a little more lively. And so there's really interesting stuff you can do. But yeah, it's kind of our wheelhouse. Transient Labs started that way with my photography. We're making pieces that change based on just the solar cycles, lunar cycles, sunset, sunrise. And the cool thing about dynamic art is it's personalized to the viewer in those time-based pieces, where I might be seeing something different than you because I'm on a different time zone, a different part of the planet. So dynamic art engine now enables any creator to start building those concepts without needing to know how to code. And we'll get into what recipes are and everything. But yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to maybe
intro?
I think that's great. I was thinking maybe we can share your screen and you can walk through the Dot Fun ecosystem, what it is, and then we can jump right in.
Yeah, let's dive in. Let's do it. Present, share screen. Is he gonna let me choose? Okay, cool. We're good, right?
I have to add it to stage. Let me see. There you go. I think that's working now. Perfect.
All right, cool. So what you're looking at right now is the Dot Fun landing page. This is Transient Dot Fun. It's an experimental ecosystem where we're building all these little micro apps. So whenever we come up with a wild idea, a Transient Labs or a useful tool or just a silly game to just engage users and have fun, this is kind of where it's going to be born or built. So this allows us to build all these little micro apps. Like Handshake is something that we launched where you can do these on-chain agreements with multiple parties. And then Dynamic Art Engine is getting its start here. But each one of these apps opens up into an entire experience. So I'll jump right into Dynamic Art Engine. And let me...
Yeah, so this is publicly available for anyone to use today.
Yes, it is. Mm-hmm.
So
when you first visit, you'll see this modal. There's a lot of ways we could have built a dynamic art tooling for creators. And one of the ways we talked about was just a website, part of the lab, where it's like, I want to create a token. I want to do dynamic art. Here's your 4 options. Do you want to do time-based, click toggle? Maybe we'll just start with those 2. And then you have just a static web page. It's like, cool, time-based, upload your 4 artworks and maybe choose what hours you want them to load and then hit mint. So there's not really any creation going on. And you're limited to what that web page template allows you to do. But the more we thought about it, and if from our engineering days, we used to have these visual programming softwares called Simulink, where you would drag blocks together. Looked a lot like this. You would drag blocks and connect the blocks. If you guys have ever used Figma or Canva or FigJam or anything to make flow charts, so you're connecting blocks, drawing lines, and what that did is it we use this program called Simulink that let us create really complex robotic algorithms for like robotic mechanisms, but without having to write machine code, because we probably all would have quit school if that's what we had to do. So it was like this visual programmer that abstracted it away from the raw code and let you build in a visual way. So we thought that was really cool. And so we're like, let's build that for HTML and JavaScript. Let's make a visual programmer for JavaScript and creative coding, which no one had really done. So that was exciting to us. So that's how we came up with this concept. If you just like land right in Dynamic Art Engine, you'll see this is the dashboard. You'll see on the right side, this is the output. This is what we call your canvas. This is what's being drawn. It's the actual dynamic artwork. It's your live output of what the blocks here or the code here is doing. On the left side, this is your actual toolbox. This is where all the blocks live. So we have major categories, like 4 toolbox categories: structure, like building the scaffolding for the code. We have rendering, which has anything to do with manipulating the visuals; logic, which is anything to do with math or logic statements like if, else, and stuff like that. Then we have programming, where you make variables, can make custom functions. If you open up any one of these trays, you'll see all these blocks in here, and you can literally just drag these blocks out and delete them. So the UI is very interactive. You can drag things anywhere. You can select any blocks. You can delete any blocks. You can move blocks out of existing structures and everything. And as you saw right there, if you get close to blocks that are able to snap together, there's all this UI built in. And so you're quite literally building stuff using all these blocks in here. And each block has code associated with it. So I'm going to clear this workspace just to show you what, this is my workspace, this thing right here. So if I have an empty workspace, you'll notice it populates 2 blocks. These are structure blocks, and these are like native to vanilla, for P5.js. If we look at our raw code output, which you can see over here, this shows you what these blocks are actually writing in code, which is pretty cool. You can see our setup function. That's this guy. It has some biased code like already built in that's helping align images, shapes, and various things to the center. And then you have this other function called rendering loop, which is the draw function. These are like the 2 core functions in P5.js. Whenever you open a new script in a P5.js editor, these are the 2 functions that are default on the canvas. So we wanted to match that a bit. But the key thing to think about is like setup. Anything run inside of setup here, you can see it's empty here. You can literally start putting stuff in here. And we just saw that block I just put in is draw image. That's everything right here. It has all this code associated with it. But you don't have to know how to write that code. You just have to know how to drag blocks around. But you can see anything inside of setup runs once. Anything inside of draw loops, and this is a P5.js. It's just a matter of fact, anything inside of draw loops runs continuously. So it is constantly running and looping. And that's kind of the core to how P5.js functions or scripts work. You have the setup function where you initialize things, set up your canvas, initialize variables, and then your rendering loop, which is constantly rendering and drawing and running functions like check time and all other kinds of stuff. And we'll get into that in a little bit. But I just wanted to show you how responsive this is. If I drag this below here, you'll see now that the function setup is below. So this output code is really matching block for block what's going on over here. But we don't expect every creator to, especially if you don't have any programming experience, to know how to get in here and explore blocks and be like, oh, I know how to create canvases, and I know that that should be in the setup function because you just create a canvas once. We don't expect people to understand that entering this for the first time. And that's why we created something called recipes. And there's a tab over here, if I click recipes, that has all of these recipes listed out. You can see titles for these recipes. You can see descriptions. So like if I look at this click toggle, It's like, oh, this toggles between two artworks with the click of a button. Cool. What happens if I click on this? I'm prompted with like, do you want to load this recipe? It's going to clear our workspace and it's going to load in a pre-built set of blocks. And that's what we define as a recipe. I went through and I created all these very common, highly requested dynamic art concepts, and I built recipes for them. So you can load it with a tutorial too. I have tutorials for every single recipe in here that you should watch. It shows you how to walk through them, but we'll load without it.
So there, Ben, those tutorials are what, like 3-minute videos that kind of walk
anywhere from 3 to 10, and they're all here in this tab. So over here, you'll see Canvas. That's our output. Recipes is our recipes. And we're going to keep adding more and more of these. Tutorials is just a list of tutorials for each recipe. You can see in different concepts in here, like uploading images to your own Arweave Dropbox. And that's just me teaching, really,
Awesome.
tutorials on each one of these. So if you hit load with tutorial and I hit load, it auto navigates to that tutorial, highlights it, and auto plays it. And the cool thing is that you can adjust the width of this. You can make it larger. You can watch this while you work alongside these blocks as I'm instructing and kind of talking alongside things. You could also go over here and do like a picture in picture. So now this thing is free floating and I can literally just put this anywhere I want. So if I want to like watch a tutorial and work alongside the canvas so I can see the output, I could just stick this tutorial over here. And now I can continue to work and while this thing's playing. So tutorials are very helpful. But you see we loaded the click toggle recipe. Now our canvas, our workspace is not blank anymore. We see a set of blocks here, right here. And if I zoom out here, this works just like Adobe or anything. We have zoom buttons here. You can recenter. You can also zoom by pinch zooming or scrolling on your mouse. You'll see that these are our blocks. We have 3 structure blocks and then 1 mouse click block. Every recipe also comes with a little how-to card, like a manual, I guess we'll put it that way, how to use this recipe. So this way you don't have to know from scratch, like, how do I even build a click toggle piece? Recipes are an amazing way to learn and a great way it's a good jumping off point. And a lot of creators will see a recipe in here like click toggle, and this is exactly what they're looking for, and they don't need to modify it at all. And so in that case, all you would need to do is upload your own artworks and paste that URL into these blocks here. And then you'll have a click toggle piece that works with your artwork. Doesn't matter what the aspect ratio is. All these recipes dynamically size based on your artwork size. So recipes are built for, I just want to put my artwork in. I don't want to touch the blocks. I don't care to understand what the blocks do. I just think dynamic art's cool. I just want to put my artwork in and come down here and hit export for minting. And then if that's all you want to do, that's why we built recipes. But also you can get in here and you can modify them. Like, how do I add more images in here? What if I want this piece to also react based on time? Or what if I want it to respond to certain keyboard inputs? Or I want to hide an Easter egg in there that if you click the top left corner, a secret image is revealed. All kinds of stuff. You can literally take any blocks in here and drag them into the current recipe and start expanding on any recipe, or you can dissect and tear apart any recipe. So it's really cool. It can go in all directions. So let's just pretend we're an artist here and we have our own artwork and we want to do a click toggle. And it works the same with all these recipes. Like if I went to 24-hour cycle, this is the same concept. This piece changes 4 times throughout the day. If you read the manual here, it tells you what the default time windows are, but those time windows can be changed down here. That's what's really cool. You can enter new time windows. You can add new images. We've had creators take this recipe and blow it out to 24 images, so a piece that changes every hour of the day instead of 4 times a day. But let's just say I have my own artwork. We'll go back to this click toggle one because it's only 2 images. The way that this would work right now, because we don't natively support image uploads because we want people to be able to, you want to store your images in a decentralized permanent manner. especially if you plan to mint this. And so right now we're asking creators to set up their own free IPFS account through Panada or Arweave account through Accord. And so you can click this, it'll link you to Accord. You can even watch a tutorial on how to do this. It's really easy. Let me show you what it looks like. The setup is no harder than setting up a Dropbox. And you get 100 megabytes free. With Panada, you get 1 gigabyte free. But the thing I like about Arweave is you pay once and it's stored forever. So once you run out of free storage, you can just buy extra storage one time and you don't have to like pay a subscription like you do with the upgraded version of Panada. So here it's just like a Dropbox. I just load images in. So if I wanted to grab a couple new images, let's say doing stuff with Juicy Julio, we all love him. Let me just use one of his. So once you upload an image, you can hit that info button and copy the Arweave link. And I can literally paste it in here. And now I have a piece that toggles between one of Julio's pieces and one of mine. And I could go get a second piece and paste it in here. And now you'd have a click toggle piece that works with your artwork. You could do the same thing with GIFs, PNGs. You can do the same thing with videos. It is a different recipe, but we do have video recipes. You can mix and match videos and stills. So if that's all you wanted to do, I can now go to export for minting. Big celebratory moment. And it downloads the HTML file on your local drive. And you can now go take that to any contract you have and mint it as a token. And that's how every recipe operates. Day of the week. This one's a cool one. So piece that changes every day of the week. Today's what? Wednesday. So it'll let me know. So this loads in an image. I just made a bunch of AI generated stuff based on what day of the week it is. And then there's other ones like slideshow, secret image reveals, where this one takes in a secret phrase, which is build different. So if I type in build different and hit enter, it reveals the secret image. If you guys know the artist Modest, he used this recipe to create an entire one of X collection. I think it's sold out in like 6 seconds too, where every piece had a different phrase and revealed an animated version of the still. It was really cool. And each one was tied to an emotion. So there's that one. There's 24-hour cycle video version. There's a 24-hour crossfade that we developed with Maximilian, who came up with this concept, and I thought it was cool, so I made it a recipe. So this piece loads in image 1, which is 100% at 12 a.m. And then throughout the day, image 2 slowly cross blends. Every minute, it checks the time and adjusts the crossfade. So by the end of the day, this will slowly evolve into the second image. So that was a cool 24-hour crossfade. And we've had people do really cool mouse mapping ones. Let me show you one that Jonas put together, and he did this on his own, which was really cool. Just built this with blocks. It's not even a recipe in here, but we're going to make it one now. So this is 4 images. He sat on top of a mountain, took photos for like 3 hours as the sun broke in and out of clouds and set and the light was evolving. So as I run my mouse across this canvas, let me make it a little bit bigger. As I run my mouse across this image, you can see the light start to evolve based on where my mouse is at. So all the way left, you have full-blown sunlight. As I move back, the sun is like dynamically changing on the landscape. So that was a really cool recipe that he built. And in the future, we're going to allow creators to save their own recipes so that other people can use them. But right now, he just saved it to his local drive by saving that file. This saves your recipe. This saves your dynamic artwork for output. And so he saved it, and we're going to make it a cool recipe for others to use. And yeah, I'll stop there because I just showed a few examples, but like you can build anything in here, and I literally mean anything. Here's a simple generative art concept that draws random squares at different shades of red and different sizes and locations across the canvas. And when I say you can literally build anything, I pushed this thing to its limits a week ago, and I built an entire Atari Asteroid game in here. So this is all made out of blocks. if I click this game to start, I now have a little ship and I can shoot these enemies coming towards me. So I built a game in here too. So anything that runs on P5.js can be built in here, even vanilla JavaScript. So I just wanted to show you. It's quite a powerful tool. And if I click it again, it'll pause my game. If these guys get past me, it ends the game. It keeps track of your score. It has bullet rate limits. So if I shoot too many bullets at once, can't shoot anymore until my ammunition recharges on the bottom. So there's a lot of complex logic in here, but all built with the dynamic art engine. So yeah, the sky's the limit here.
And you can save, like, if it's a work in progress and I don't want to lose it, what should I do, Ben?
Yeah, if you're like building this and you're not ready, it's not done, but you've made some modifications and you're testing and all that stuff, you hit the download button and you do save to file. This saves your what's called a JSON file, but it saves your recipe. If I were to save this, let me show you what a JSON file looks like. I downloaded into the wrong folder, whatever. Let's download it over here. So if I view this, this is what a JSON file looks like. And this is what the dynamic art engine is pulling in. It basically tells it like, hey, here's every block that is in this recipe at that current moment in time, where it goes, what the values are, and how they're put together. And so when you load that into the DAE here, like if I go load from file and I click the 4-image crossfade, it tells the dynamic art engine like, oh, these are all the blocks that build up. It consists of. Here's the values that it uses. Here's the Arweave links. So it stores all that so you can save any work in progress. And you can share files with your friends too. Like if you build a recipe, you can send them the JSON file and they can load it into the dynamic art engine too.
Exactly.
Eventually we'll support that all in a recipe type marketplace, but that's further down the line a little bit.
Yeah, Ben. We had a great question, which I think is actually great for us to dive into next here, would be around integrating external data sources, both on-chain and off-chain. So
yeah,
I mean, there's a lot of directions we can take this, but maybe we just, dive into it. A lot of artists, when they use the dynamic art engine to create a piece that changes with weather or with crypto prices, like,
yeah.
So how could they do that? Is that possible in the dynamic art engine?
Yeah, that's a very common question, actually. I mean, it kind of really opens a can of worms about like what is an API and why are APIs, why are they risky is not the right word. Why are there some concerns around using APIs for NFTs? And the main reason is that an API, any data, external data like weather or ETH prices, relies on some middleman putting that data together and serving it up in what's called an API endpoint that you can ping from your code and be like, give me the ETH price. If that ever goes down, the NFT relying on that API endpoint would obviously no longer function the way it was meant to function. And so you'd have to go do a bunch of metadata updates, and that costs gas. So there's some longevity concerns with APIs. So people started building on-chain data storage solutions through what's called like an Oracle, which uses 32 API endpoints. And I think like a certain percentage of them have to respond in order for the data to be sent. So it's more robust against one API going down because you have like 31 others. But if you're accessing that from off-chain, like Arweave or IPFS, which most all of us are doing because our artworks are too big to practically put on chain from a cost perspective, then you're still entering a single failure point to get that data on chain. So there's some concerns about longevity and reliability of APIs, which is why if you look at Dynamic Art Engine today, does not have any external data. It has data that can be used natively within the user's machine, like what time it is. You can grab anything to do with time. You can also do anything to do with user interactions like mouse click, drag, move, and all that stuff. Let me reset my size here so we can see what I'm actually looking at here. All these like user interactions, all these variables like current, month, day, week, day, hour, minute, second. These ones don't rely on an API. Calculations, lunar cycles, all kinds of planetary data, things that can be calculated out hundreds of thousands of years, that doesn't rely on API. Tides, you can calculate tide cycles. That's how someone did a piece with rising and falling tides, because it's just lunar gravitational pull. So that can be calculated. But that being said, we have done a lot of external API stuff with artists. We've done pieces that change with time. Change with ETH price. We've done pieces that change with weather, human population, and some other stuff, some other external data sources. So it's cool. I love APIs because it unlocks being able to do some really cool artworks that respond to things. So you can still do that in here, even though there's not a block for weather yet. You know, we're thinking of a way to make it a little bit more robust, where maybe Transient Labs has a master API that hosts a bunch of common data like weather, ETH prices, and stuff like that. But you can still make a piece that changes based on price of ETH, for example. And you could just load in a click toggle recipe as a good jumping off point, because it already presets 2 images. It draws your canvas, and it draws this variable called image, which we're starting at image 1. And so this is constantly drawing. Down here, you'll see as I click the mouse, it's checking to see, does image equal image 1? If it does, switch it to image 2. Otherwise, switch it to image 1. That's how it's toggling back and forth. But you could straight up delete this, mouse click. See, no longer, it doesn't respond anymore. And I can make a new custom function here called check price ETH. Sure. And then I could have my rendering loop constantly checking this. Like, remember what I said? This guy's running all the time. It's clearing the canvas, drawing the image, running a function. That function tells it what image should be displaying, and then it'll update it and draw that image, check it again, and it's constantly running at 60 frames a second. Fun fact. You can change that rate actually by putting in this block called set frame rate, where maybe I just want it to run once a second because that's more practical. So now this is running and checking once a second. So I have this custom function now called check ETH price, and we put a special block all the way down in custom called raw code. And the whole point of this is for users who want to inject code that is not represented by a block yet. And so you can see here, look at that. Here's my check ETH price function. If I type stuff in here, like if I wanted to say like data equals, you can see as I'm typing that code, whatever I'm putting in here is getting injected at this part in the code. So I could ask GPT like, hey, what's the code to check ETH prices using Coinbase's API? It would probably tell you something that looks a lot like this, Coinbase.eth price, blah, 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 some other stuff. And I can actually paste that code into this code block and set it equal to a variable, and then run some easy if-else logic here, being like, if ETH price is above 3,000, display image 2. Otherwise, display image 1. So yeah, you can definitely do external stuff with this. It does require a little bit of actual coding, since you have to do a raw blocks. We haven't supported it yet. But GPT is really helpful and stuff like that. Because the nice thing is that you can copy and paste all this code, and you can feed it to GPT and be like, here's my code so far. What do I put in check ETH price to get the price of ETH from, I don't know, a certain API? And it'll tell you what that code block chunk is, and then you just paste that in here. So yeah, we're definitely working on making that a lot easier, because the whole point of this is they shouldn't have to like actually write code. But we put this raw code block in here because a lot of creatives use GPT as a tool or have some coding experience. I like having the raw block. Sometimes there'll be a specific function that's not represented by an actual block here, and I'll just write it into that raw code. Like for my asteroids game, you can see when I wanted to generate sounds here, there's actually MIDI sounds. I used the raw code block, and I just had GPT give me, hey, generate a sound that sounds like an enemy ship blowing up, generate a laser sound, generate a little game over tune. And it would just give me the code for that. And I just paste it in here as a custom function and then run that function when the game was over, like here. It's like, hey, if my enemy passes my ship, the game is over, and play that game over sound. So, yeah, I don't know. That the raw code has some good purposes, including being able to get a little more advanced and doing like external data points and stuff. But we'll get some API stuff in here. We just have to think of the best way to approach it.
Yeah, we don't want artworks to be breaking every day or every other week because the API goes down.
Yeah, we've already had it happen with the Lit project. We helped Lit do a long time ago with Robert De Niro and the piece that changes based on price of ETH. That API went down like a year ago, and we've just been, no one's ever fixed it. So the piece still loads, it just doesn't respond to ETH anymore because that API no longer exists. I think it was CoinGecko, and they shut down that endpoint. So yeah, there's some risks to using APIs, but if you're willing to like monitor it and respond to your collectors, if the API goes down, you can always come back into your recipe here, update the API to a new endpoint, and then republish the piece and update the metadata. Like, that's totally doable. What else? Yeah, I don't know what else we want to do. I mean, it's hard to capture all that's possible in just a single webinar, but like, I'm dead serious. You can do anything in here. Like, here's a cool piece that changes based on yeah, go for it.
No, go ahead. Continue with this one.
I was just going to say, here's a piece that changes based on 2 images crossfading based on my mouse position. So I was just going to show, like, this is a recipe I plan to actually make today and get out in there. So I could just paste in my 2 Arweave links that I already have from uploading my image. So now I've got this piece that starts black and white, and then as I move my mouse across, colorizes. And I was like, oh, that's pretty sweet. That's a pretty powerful recipe to have a piece that's kind of like interactive like this. We've done pieces like this with Jeremy Cower's Litograph back in the day, if anyone knows of that one. So I can also remove the tint on there. There was a black and white filter. So now it just will, let's see here. Yeah, go ahead. Say what you were going to say, Daniel, while I just like update this really quick.
I was just going to transition and ask, like, maybe, well, I was going to start by saying that, again, this is kind of a starting point. You're not going to come out of this webinar knowing exactly how to build the piece you want. Maybe you will if you're using a recipe or if you have some technical knowledge, but most likely you have to fiddle around and keep playing with it for a little. So with that being said, I just want to make us available for anyone. If you're noodling on this and you have a creative idea and you're not sure where to start, please feel free to DM, me or Ben or the Transient account, and we'll set up either a smaller group session. Like we do these smaller, this is a webinar with, over 25 people in the stream and then 200 people on Twitter. But we do these smaller group sessions with about 4 artists where we can basically go a little bit more in depth and build out your ideas on the call.
Yeah, I'll try to do one-on-ones in these early days, because while this tool can be used completely without any knowledge of the tool itself, like I just took this recipe, pasted my 2 images in there, and now I have a piece that transitions between night and day based on my mouse position. I could download that and export it. Well, that is an option, and that's why we built recipes. The powerful part of this tool is how much you can do with it. You don't have to stay confined within what the recipes are. You can kind of get crazy and wild and really create any kind of dynamic art concept. And we're going to keep building recipes. Artists are going to keep building recipes, and eventually we'll have like a very large database of all searchable recipe types and dynamic art concepts and all kinds of really cool stuff. And generative art. Like, you can make some really cool generative art, and sometimes we'll build a generative art script live on the call, but Rich Caldwell is doing something really cool with generative photography. And he used this dynamic art engine not as a tool to make an artwork that's dynamic. He used it as a software to create an actual tool that he can use in his creation process. So he made a recipe that he can plug his images into, and it randomly assembles them into a grid of really, and completely uses all sorts of random determination blocks like this. It randomly assembles them into a grid, creating like generative photography, unlike anything that I've seen before. So it was cool. He built a tool for himself in this. So this is not only for dynamic art and generative art, and apparently you can build games in here, but you can also build creation tools like collage builders, generative art templates for splicing together bunches of images. There's probably all kinds of stuff. You can use this as like here's a cool one. This is a cool one, and it's fun. It's easy to wrap your head around. Let me see where I saved it. So there's a very simple one here. I'm just using one of Mind's Eye's images here, but I could go to Twitter just to mess around. I want to show you something here. Got it. I can just find someone's art piece. Let's take Ayla. Click on it. Copy image address.
Just don't do this if you're going to be minting a piece.
Yeah, don't use Twitter's link. It's probably not very permanent, but you can use it just to test stuff. So this is a cool one where you're using this as a tool to apply color dithering to images. So there's this block here called dither, and it literally says apply dither. And if you hit this drop down, there's tons of preset color target themes, I guess, including like artist themes where it creates the piece based in various artists' color palettes, and we're working with more and more artists. But you can sit here and just apply any one of these, and it takes the colors of the actual image and bins them based on what color that pixel is closest to, and converts it and forces it into one of these templates. So it's pretty cool stuff. So this is just an example how you could use this as a tool. And then if you like your output, you can see I have a function here called on mouse click export my output. So now I can come over here and click on the actual piece, and it saves the artwork. And I can open that artwork, and now I have a static piece that I created inside the dynamic art engine of that piece. And so this is just a JPEG. So this is a good example of how you can use this as an actual tool to manipulate images and create artwork. And I'm going to add this as a recipe too, I think. But the apply dither block is just right inside of rendering. And then we also have other blocks too, like blend modes. You can apply all kinds of different blend modes to pieces. You can apply filters like black and white, invert, opaque, erode, dilate, posterize. There's all kinds of cool stuff in here that we've made blocks for.
Yeah, someone had a question, Ben, about if they're missing a block that they would really like to see, where can they let us know? I don't think we have like a feedback or feature request for this specifically yet, so I just told them to DM us. Do you think that's kind of the right approach there?
Yeah, I think it's totally fair.
Awesome.
We know we don't have all the blocks in here. That is why we put the custom raw code in here. So if you're well on your way to creating something and you need a specific function that's not a block, you can temporarily, in the meantime, just stick it in there as like a raw code block. But
exactly,
it's surprising how much you can do with the existing blocks in here.
You can do a lot. We've had over 10 group sessions, and I think in every smaller group session that we've done, we've built a new idea from scratch from creators, which has been insane to see.
like the one where we built the piece where I'm drawing with my pendulum light paintings. That's like one of my favorite.
That one was sick.
So I'll let people ask questions. In the meantime, I'm gonna maybe start assembling that. You can see how I'm building this.
As Ben's building this out, please, if you have any questions, drop them in chat. I'd love to get them answered kind of one at a time. We're coming up on time here. For our first webinar, we will continue doing these, bi-weekly most likely. So it might not always be about the Dynamic Art Engine, but just about our ecosystem in general and all the different tools and capabilities that we have for creators and collectors. So yeah, please feel free to ask questions here in chat. We'll get those answered for you and keep building. I'm going to sound like a broken record here, but again, this is just a starting off point for you to start thinking about ideas. You may not know exactly what you want to build yet. This should get your creative juices flowing. And then once you have an idea, you can jump in and start building, or you can reach out to us. We'll gladly assist you in building this as well. We want people to use it and understand how to use it. And the goal is for creators to create recipes, right? I know Matt Scoble here mentioned one of his old dynamic artworks that we helped build and making it into a recipe, which I love that idea. So we're going to continue adding recipes constantly for different use cases, by different creators and from ourselves as well. We hit 311, Ryan. Awesome. Let me see. Anyone using these tools to create JS for adding dynamic art for ordinal inscriptions? I'm not sure I understand the question. I don't know, Ben, maybe you might be able to.
Say it again.
Anyone using this tool to create JS for adding dynamic art for ordinal inscriptions?
I haven't heard of anyone using it yet for that, but
should be possible.
You could definitely do that and then inscribe it on ordinal inscriptions if you want.
It just spits out an HTML file. Wherever.
Yeah. It does just spit out an HTML file. Yeah, I was just drawing this one. As you can see, it's now like drawing based on where my mouse is at random sizes. But as you can see, my pendulums have that black background. This is where the blending mode comes into handy. So I can actually tell it like, hey, I want my blend load to be screened so it only lets through the brightest of the pixels. So now I can, no, actually, let me set a background color too. So I'm going to draw a black background. So now I can actually draw with my pendulum and it removes that black. This blend mode essentially removes that black square around each piece. So now it becomes a brush stroke, which is really cool. And yeah, you can do all kinds of stuff like this.
Yeah, it's wild.
This is just a cool like interactive piece, but I could even change like the tint of things. I could zero out red so that the pendulum's a different color, and you could like assign random numbers to each one of these color categories. So it's like a different color every time it draws. Yeah, so lots of really crazy stuff. But this is just a, I don't even know what this is. Just a cool little canvas I made to draw stuff on.
Yeah, no, I love it. Matt here is asking for a 4-hour stream of just watching you make stuff, which I think a lot of creators would love. So maybe that'll be our next one. It's just DAE marathon.
Yeah.
And we can just maybe we just co-build, like people can come in and out and we can help creators build their pieces live on air. That'd be cool.
Yeah, that could be cool.
Fine Art Crypto, I'm not sure about your question of Comfy UI. I'm not familiar with that tool. I don't know if Ben, you're familiar with Comfy, but
I think I've heard of it. Yeah, they use visual programming. Very similar to this. There you go. There's now got blues and greens. Sorry, I'm just like fucking around at this point.
Ben's having fun.
But yeah, I've heard of Comfy UI. I think they use visual programming, and then there's what is it called? Sketcher? Not Sketcher.
Sketch? I don't know.
Sketch maybe? Yeah.
Well,
But yeah, some.
and so this, if you were to mint this, it exports it as an HTML where like if I'm viewing it, I can just draw on it basically.
Yeah, like if I download this as an HTML, draw pendulums. You could mint this, or you could open it into a full screen browser, and it's the same shit. Like, beep. Now this file contains all the logic that I put in here. I could go to the lab, let's see here. Let's make sure I could go over here, create a token. Let's create a new token. I could be like, cool, drop pendulums. It's an animated piece, so it's gonna be like, hey, give me a thumbnail. I don't really have a thumbnail. I'm just gonna upload this image. And then I can preview the token, and you can see over here, it's the same shit. Like you're minting this actual dynamic interactive canvas, which is really cool. So someone could make really cool brush strokes, and that is like brush patterns, and that could be the art. And then the collection is a one-of-one collection, one of X collection, where each piece that you mint is a different brush stroke. And so it's up to the collector. They're presented with a blank canvas when they load the piece, and it's up to them to kind of make it an art piece based on the brushstroke that's coded into that specific one-of-one. So there's some like really cool concepts that I've thought about doing, not personally, but just an artist could do, where all of a sudden like the creation of brushstrokes becomes a mintable art form, which I think is pretty cool. Because there's some very talented brush stroke makers, if you've ever used like Illustrator or Photoshop and bought some of those brush packets. This is a cool way where you could make an art collection out of different brush strokes. You can even draw in the preview over here. It doesn't matter. It's pretty fun. And you can see it dynamically sizes. It doesn't care what size the frame is. That's how all the dynamic art engine HTML wrappers are coded, is that it's properly sized with good coding practices. So no matter if my iframe is a tiny little square or if it's a giant square on the side here, or if it's a full-blown, well, we just opened it a second ago, if it's a full-blown like browser window that's 16 by 9, it is always making sure that it's contained within whatever the viewport window is.
We had an interesting question here around creating a block that erases instead of drawing, which I think would be possible within the DAE.
Yeah, you could theoretically erase by let's do this really quick. So we got a block, right? We're drawing our stuff. You could hit reset. That just refreshes the piece. It starts from scratch. Dynamic artworks are kind of dumb like that. Just all HTML artworks. They wake up as if they're being born for the first time every time you load a dynamic piece. Or any HTML script, they don't have any memory of what happened. So they just are kind of waking up and they're like, oh, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to load this image in, do this. Oh, this is my tasks. This is what I'm supposed to do. Listen for mouse drags and do this when you mouse drag. Unless you're storing things to like an external database, pieces don't have memory. So when you hit refresh, they start fresh. But if you're drawing something and you make a mistake, I like that idea of eraser. I've thought about it, but it didn't click until you just brought it up. So I could also I could draw a circle here. And there'd be a little bit of logic in here, but I can make that circle black. And I would set the same stuff here. You can copy and paste blocks, by the way. So you could be like, oh, I don't want to go grab that block again. You can just find that mouse X and Y that you have somewhere else. This is saying put it where my mouse is X coordinate wise and put it where my mouse is Y coordinate wise. Diameter, let's just set it to 50. So now, if I just stuck it in here, we'd have a problem. Because what it's doing is it's drawing an image and it's drawing a circle at the same time, which we don't want to actually be happening. So we'd want to throw this into a logic statement. Do we have time to do this? I guess I could do it really quick. Let me show you guys. Yeah, let me go super fast. So make a new variable called erase. Just like you would do on Photoshop, you have to click the eraser tool. And we would initialize that variable set erase to false. So we're not in erase mode to start. We're in draw mode to start. And then down in our drawing function here, this big guy, we're going to basically put an if statement in here that says if erase, meaning if erase is true, we want to draw black circles. Else, and there's no if else here, so there's a settings thing here. We're going to draw this guy in here. So if erase is not true, we're going to drag all that stuff in there. So when I start, erase is false, so it's just going to draw my circles down here, my cool brush stroke. If I set this to true, it's going to obviously reset the canvas because I'm changing the code. So we need a way to dynamically change this variable without resetting the code. How do we do that? We do it through a listener event called key press, just like a shortcut you would get on Photoshop. Let's see here. We'll call it erase. Actually, we just call it key. So now what I'm going to do here, hang in with me. If the key that's pressed, we're just piecing this together. If the key that's pressed is equal to what? We'll just hit E for erase. If the key that's pressed is equal to erase, set the erase variable to, and here's a little tricky way of doing this. I'm not going to really get too much into what I'm doing here, but you could just say set erase to false, but then you'd need like another one to be like if erase is false, set to true. All this does is say set erase to not erase, meaning like set erase to the opposite of what erase currently is. So it toggles it back and forth between true or false. So if what are we starting at? False. So if I'm drawing here and then I hit E on my keyboard, I'm now should be drawing a black circle, which I am. And it should be drawing over. I'd have to play with this a little more. I'm probably missing something really simple. But I'm probably like 95% the way there. I just have to look at this for a second, and I don't want to waste people's time. But I could just start drawing over this with the same color as the background, black, to effectively erase what's been stamped onto the canvas. I'd have to think about why this isn't working.
No, that's great. Appreciate you showing that. We'll get it working, I'm sure.
Yeah, we will.
Yeah, should we close this out together, Ben?
Sure. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. So this was the first Dynamic Art Engine webinar. This is publicly available for anyone to use, so you can go ahead and get started at Transient Dot Fun right now. We highly recommend getting started with recipes. Those are kind of like templates. It'll help you get a feel for the different functions and the different, what are they called? Like kits within the toolkit, the different variables within the toolkit, such as logic, rendering, structure, or programming. And yeah, like we're excited to see what everyone creates here. Please get started. Please DM us. We're going to set up more group sessions. We're going to do other webinars like this for Dynamic Art Engine, for other parts of our ecosystem. So
I figured it out. Sorry.
Oh, you're good. Go for it.
So I just didn't have remember I set the blend mode to screen up here?
Yes.
It was globally setting it to screen. It was even setting my black brush to screen, which means that it wouldn't show up behind a bright pixel. But now I have it conditionally setting. I want blend mode blend when I'm drawing circles and blend mode screen when I'm drawing my pendulum stuff. So now if I draw pendulums and then switch to erase, I can now effectively erase these with my block. I can make that diameter bigger here. Right now it's set to 50. I could set it to 100 so the brush stroke is a little larger. You could programmatically set this too. So maybe you want to click square brackets and it'll change this. So you can make a tool where now I can draw with brush strokes and then be like, oh shoot, I didn't mean to do that right there. Then you can keep drawing, keep drawing. Maybe I like come down too far here and I'm like, I want to kind of remove some of that. So yeah, you can actually effectively create an erase here. So that's pretty cool. I've never actually put the two things together, but totally doable. There we go.
Sounds
So
like
now
a
I
new
have
recipe.
and I would get even more in depth in this and have like the ability to change this diameter by pressing left and right arrow keys. So I could change my erase diameter, change my brush paint diameter, and you can make a piece that's literally like an interactive drawing canvas. Or you could use this as a tool to create your own artworks in here. And then save these or export these as full res PNGs and mint those. So there's a lot of cool routes you could go. Yeah, this is cool. I'm going to save this as a work in progress recipe so that I can throw it in here later as a recipe for everyone to use. What would we call this?
Erase.
Draw and erase. Draw
Draw and erase, yeah.
and erase. Sure. Cool. Yeah, thanks for whoever brought that up. I didn't see, but that's really cool to be able to just like erase stuff.
Yeah. No, sweet. Again, thanks everyone for joining. We're doing this for the last hour. Appreciate your attention and excited to just see what everyone creates here. So please don't hesitate to DM me. My Twitter's at Daniel100eth or DM the Transient account, at Transient Labs. We'll be happy to help and get started with the dynamic art engine. Ben, do you have any closing thoughts here?
No, just don't hesitate to reach out. Like this is a very powerful tool, so there is a learning curve to anything that's very powerful. Like if you jumped into Photoshop for the first time ever, most people would be very lost on how to even start. So that's why we have recipes. That's why each recipe comes with a manual on how to use it. Also, each recipe, you'll notice when I'm building my own blocks, there's no question marks on these blocks. But in recipes, there's question marks on every block. So these are added for people to load recipes and actually read what each function's doing. So if you look at enough recipes, you read them, you play around with them, you read these info blocks on like what this is actually doing, you'll start to understand the role of each block, how it's used, and there's anywhere from 3 to 10 minute long tutorial videos in here on every recipe, how to use it as is, and also there's always a feeling adventurous section of every recipe manual. So these tutorials cover on like, how do you change the default time windows here? What if I want to add a 5th, 6th, 7th piece in here? So I'll cover all of that if you go down to like the 24-hour cycle image recipe. So lots of ways to learn in here. Very easy to use if you just want to use the recipes as is, but limitless if you want to get in here and create your own. And don't hesitate to reach out if you have an idea and you get stuck or just want to hop on and do some paired co-creation of a recipe.
Let's do it.
Cool. I still need to build a piece that uses an API. I keep saying that, like using the raw code block just to show how it's possible. So I'll probably do that next week, but
sounds good. Well, thank you everyone for joining. I hope you have a good rest of your week. We do. And we'll talk soon.